All right. Hi there and welcome to this video tutorial. In this video tutorial, we want to have some fun, all right, with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And we will use those three technologies right now to somehow devise this game that is in your screen right now. I'm about to explain the principles of the game, but before I go into that, I would like to say upfront that this is not an HTML, CSS, or JavaScript uh, crash course or tutorial. All right, so I've left links in the video description below where you can learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and get up and running in that in no time. This will be a sort of project exercise that will get you to better master the knowledge that you may get if you already know HTML, CSS, or JavaScript. On another hand, if you are interested in learning web development as a whole, right, I'll leave a link in the description below to a sort of school that already has pre-prepared material for you to move from web development from zero to pro. All right, and I will personally lead you through the completion of that material. So that being said, we can go ahead and jump right into it. Great. So what you have here is a word guess game. All right, so the principle basically is very simple. Two people come together to play, and these two have a word in mind. All right, each person has his word in mind, and the one that guesses the word of the other emerges the winner of the game. It's as simple as that. All right, so what happens here? As you can see here, all right, you'll see enter your word for player one. Okay, so let's say the first person, he comes and he says his word is something like game, right? Okay, and then player two also has to enter his word. So obviously in this phase, since we are in the front end application, um uh you have to use the same device, and player one has to then hide the device, and then player two has to hide the device so that each person does not see the word in question that they are typing into the computer, right, or into the phone or the iPad, whatsoever you're using. So let's say player two's word is guess, and when player two validates his word, the game can start, right? So player one is supposed to guess a letter in opponent's word. Sorry for this, A is not supposed to be there. In opponent's word, right? Or the whole word. We will not focus on this whole word part, okay? We will just guess letter by letter, right? And the word of player two, if you remember, is guess, right? So it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? It's a 5-letter word, and player one has to guess any letter within player two's word. So let's say he thinks that there is a vowel A there, for example. That's wrong, right? There is no vowel there, so it's player two's turn to guess. Okay, and player one's word is game. It is a 4-letter word, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And so let's say he too starts with an A. Well, A is found, as you can see, in player one's word, right? So the A will appear here, and it is still player two's turn to play. So when a player finds the letter in the opponent's word, it is his turn. He continues the game until he fails a guess, right? So let's say he says T now is found there, so he's failed. Okay, player two thinks S is a very common letter, or rather player one thinks S is a very common letter, so he tries S, and all the occurrences of S appears in player two's word, and it is still player one turn to play. And as you imagine, the game goes on and on and on in that mannerism. Okay, if he fails, it goes back to player one. Player one tries G and so on, right? And then he just finishes. Good. So at this level, I would like to give you guys two assignments before we even enter the project, right? Assignments that we will not necessarily cover in this video tutorial. The first one is to make sure that there is a timer. Okay, so player one has a certain amount of time, to guess player two's word, and it's the same. So we can say 30 seconds. So when it is player one's turn to play, all right, so let's say T, or player two's turn to play as it is now, right? There will be a timer somewhere maybe here, that counts down from 30 right down to 0. All right, and by the time it reaches 0, if player 2 has not played, it automatically swaps to player 1. All right, and same thing for player 1. Start the countdown at 30, and if it has not played, he swaps back to player 2. So that would be a good exercise for you to apply your JavaScript. And the other exercise is to make sure that once we finish the game, like here, player 1 has already guessed the whole word. We are not supposed to be able to move to and fro in the game again like that. It's over, right? Player 1 has won. So there should be a sort of message that says player 1 won, and then the game ends right there. Okay, great. So let's now see how to go about realizing this game step by step. All right. So for that, I'll open my text editor. I'm using Visual Studio Code, and I will leave a link also in the video description below to show you how to set it up and get your live server up and running, etc. But for the new project we want to embark on, we will just come right here and create a new folder for that project. All right, I will just create a new folder right here. Okay, and let's call the folder game. Okay, good, and select that. So the folder should open, and obviously what we want to start by is our HTML. Okay, for the Visual Studio, it's still loading. Computer is very slow these days. I don't know what is happening. Great, so it's there. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and divide our screen. Let's put the text editor on one end and the browser on the other, so we have something like that. And we'll just go ahead and create a new file here, okay, and start with our HTML, wordguess.html. All right, wait for that to create and open. Okay, so we have that. All right, so what we'll do here, I will just go ahead and set up the HTML boilerplate. Okay, good. All right, so we have that. Okay, and then we'll open our HTML in the live server. These are things that are not supposed to take so much time. Okay, so just forgive my computer for today, please. It will try harder next time. Okay, so that's what we have. That's what we have. We have our HTML document here, and we'll be having our word guess game here just for reference purposes. All right, we'll be looking at it here, and then so let's just refresh this so that we know where to start. This is what we want to start with. All right, so the very first thing we'll see here is that the title here is word guess game. Okay, we'll just change our title right here to word guess game. Word guess game. Okay, and we should have it there, right? That's word guess game. And now we would like to create this box. Okay, so as we can see, all of the elements are found within a particular box. So for that box, I'll create a div, right, and then we'll place all of the elements inside of it. So for this enter your word, which is the instruction, we'll create it as a paragraph tag. Okay, and we'll say enter your word. All right, so what do we have so far? That's it. We have enter your word, right? The next thing is player one, and we'll create it as an h2 tag. All right, so heading 2, and we will say player 1. All right, so good. And the next thing here is an input element to enter our text, and input text should do just fine. Right, we have that, and the next thing is our OK button, right, to validate. OK button, sorry, the tag is button, and we'll just say OK. Right, good, we have all that. Okay, so we have all that in our div element, and basically that's that for HTML, right? We have all of our elements there. The next thing we want to do is to move to CSS to be able to style it, right? So that we can add all of these borders and center it and put this line and all the like, right? Very simple, very straightforward. So for that, we'll come right here to our text editor and create an HTML file that we'll call WordGuess. A CSS file, sorry, that we'll call wordguess.css. All right. So what we want to do now is just to link it to our HTML file, okay, to be sure that it reads from there. We use that shortcode, and the name of our file is wordguess.css, right? Good. So let's try to see that is correctly connected. We'll just try to select that div tag, okay, and then maybe give it a background color. Give it a background color of aqua. Why not? Good. So that's our div. All right. So it means our CSS is correctly connected. Good. So we can start our styling. So as you can see here, the div actually spans through all of the width right here. Okay, we don't need that. So I think that we can see clearly from here that the div actually has a border. Okay, so let's just go ahead and put that border. We'll say border. The border there is 2 pixels. 2 pixels. It's solid, and the color is black, right? Good, so we have that. Now the border spans through all of the body, right? We don't want that. We want it to want the width to fit the content. Okay, so we'll write just that. We'll say the width of the border should fit the content. All right, and that's what we get. The next thing is that we don't want, as you can see here, we don't want our elements to be at level of the borders here. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll put a padding all around it for it to have some spacing between it and the ends, as you can see here. So we'll put padding all around it, and let's just give that padding a value of 20 pixels. Good, we have that. All right, so the next thing is that everything here is centered, all right, as you can see, and for that we'll activate the flex display mode, right? That should actually organize all our elements, as you can see, in a row. Okay, but we want them organized in a column, so we'll indicate the flex direction to be column. All right, and we should get that. And the next thing is that we want it to be centered. All right, so we'll just say align items and say something like center. Perfect, that's what we get. All right, but the spacing here is actually extremely ugly. Okay, so what we'll do to just solve that is that we'll select all of the elements, all of our HTML elements, right, with a star, and then we'll give all of the elements a bottom and the top margin of 5 pixel, and the left and right margin of 0. Good, so we have a uniform spacing right there. That looks more interesting. Okay, so what next here, we want this particular border radius. Okay, we want those rounded corners, so we'll give our div a border radius of 20 pixels. All right, and there we have it. So what's left? What's left for our div is this particular box shadow, right? So we'll give it a box shadow, and the horizontal position of that box shadow, we want it 10 pixels. The vertical position 10 pixels. The border radius, we'll take it at 5 pixels, and the spread, we'll just leave it at 0. And then for the color, we'll take RGBA. Want it black, all right? So for black, you'll be 0, 0, 0, and then we'll take a 0.75 opacity, right, or transparency. And what does that give us? Good. We have this beautiful border around it, box shadow. Sorry, we have this beautiful box shadow around it. Okay, so far so good. So what's left here now is to center it on our view screen, as you can see here. Okay, so for that we'll have to style our body tag, or rather give it some properties, right? The very first thing I would like to do with this body tag is to actually look at it. All right, so we'll just say border and 1 pixel solid blue, or red. Let me just say red. And as you can see, this is our body right here. Okay, but we don't want our body to be thus, because we need to center this div element at the center of the screen right here. Okay, and the highest element in hierarchy here is the body. So what we want to do right now is actually to give the body a height of view height. Okay, so from here to here is the view height, is a height that we can actually see. We need the body to feel all of that height first. All right, so we'll just say height. The height of the body should be 100% of the view height. All right, so now we have something like that, right? We just accept it the way it is. And so now we can center our div within this body element, and for that we'll just use display flex again, right? It's so much easy that way. When I say display flex, I have something like that. And what we want to do is to align. We first of all want to align items to the center. The items here now is the div itself. All right, and then justify content, and the content here is still the div itself, right? Justify content center, and there we have it. We have a div at the center, and all we can do to mimic what we have there exactly is just to remove this border radius, and there we have it, as simple as that, right? We have our box at the center, and what's left here? This paragraph, right? You can see that it is underlined down this way, right? Good. So for that, let's select our paragraph tag and style it. Before we style it, let me just than to underline it, because the underlining here is not really a text underline. As you can see, it does not underline the text itself. It is a border bottom. All right, a border bottom that goes through all the width of the element. So we'll just use that property here. Let's say border bottom, excuse me, border bottom, all right, of 1 pixel, solid, and let's make it black. Okay, let's make it black. So as you can see, ours is not actually spanning all through. Okay, and that's because the width of this particular paragraph is also set to fit the content. All right, so what we want to do here is actually to make sure that it's not the case. All right, so we'll set the width of the paragraph to be 100%. 100% means it will fill all the space, okay, within its parent, and that's what we have. And now we need to center this text here, so we'll just say text, text align, yeah, center, right? And there we have it. Okay, as simple as that. Great. So now we can start doing some stuff. All right, so what next? So the next thing now is actually for us to start programming the functionality, right? So let the game begin to operate the way it's supposed to operate, right? So we need to enter the words here, and when we click on OK, it goes to player 2 and all the like. So let's to be able to do that, we'll need to move to JavaScript. All right, so we'll just create our JavaScript file here, wordguess.js, right? And yeah, that should create itself. And let's connect our JavaScript file to our HTML to tell the HTML to read from there for every functionality, right? So we'll just say script, and the source right here will be the word guess.js. Okay, so let's see that it's well connected. So the way we'll do that, let's just alert, connected here. All right, good. So we can see here connected, right? So it means everything works perfectly fine. All right, so what's the first thing we want to do here? Let's go step by step. All right, so we want to be able to enter a word here, and then when we click on OK, right, we have access to that word in our program. Okay, in fact, every functionality happens when we click on OK. The next steps always happens when we click on OK. All right, so we want to be able to do some stuff when we click on this OK button. So the very first thing will be for us to be able to manipulate this OK button from our code. All right, and for us to do that, we need to store the OK button in a variable in our code. All right, so to do that, we'll just create a let here OK button. Let's call it like that. All right, it's a variable name I'm giving is equal to, and we will just go through our document, right, using the query selector method, and select the button tag. All right, select the first object with the button tag. So we can use this. We don't need any IDs or class. In this particular case, the example is very simple. We have just one button, right? So to be sure that we've selected our button, let's just try to console the log that. Okay, so console the log that, and what we'll do here is we'll just open our inspector. We'll right click and inspect and open our console to be sure that we got that button right. Great, so let's move to the console. All right, so as you can see, console, good. So as you can see, this is the button right here. Okay, so select it, we are on the button. So it means this variable actually, right, is our button right here. So what we want to do now is to actually add an event listener, right? We want to add an event listener that listens for a click, right? So that when we click on the button, there's a certain function that executes itself, which we will write. We'll write. We'll write soon. All right. So we'll say OK button dot add, right? We'll add an event listener, and the event listener should listen for a click. All right, and when we click, it should execute this particular function that we are yet to write. All right, okay, good. So that's what we want. Oh, sorry. Good, so that's what we want. So let's just be sure that we've connected this right. Okay, so now let's say that when we click on the button, we'll alert something like button clicked. Okay, button click. So what happens? What happened? Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. My God, what is this thing loading? Wow. All right. So when I click on the button, as you can see, button clicked, right? Very simple. So everything that each time we click on this button, what we write within this code span here will run. Okay, will execute. So let me just comment my code a little bit. All right. So we'll say here HTML elements. Okay, and then here we are saying this is the callback for button click. All right, so we have that. So what do we want? We want that when player one here enters his word, all right, and then click on OK, we want to be able to have access to this word, right, in our code. And this here is an input tag, right? So we need to be able to access it in order to access the information that is stored in it, because this information is actually stored in the value property of this input object. All right. So to access the input object, it is an HTML element. So let's just reduce all of these so that we can see our code clearly. It's an HTML element, and we will call it input. We'll say let input, all right, be equal to document dot query selector, all right, of input. Okay, and to be sure that we are getting every value that he's entering here right, as we said, it is stored in the value property. Let's just console.log each time we click. Let's console.log input.value. All right, put a semicolon there. Okay, so if I enter game and click on OK, as you can see, it is game that is console logged here, right? So the game is stored in the value property of this input, and I can access it by simply saying input.value. Let's try another word, guess, and OK. Good. So it's been entered with no problem, right? But what do we want to do now? What we want to do is to make sure that we are able to store these words, right? So when we click on OK, it should get the word that is right here and then store it, because we don't want to lose it. Once player 1 has entered his word, we want to get his word to be able to use it, right, for player 2. And once player 2 has entered his word, we want to get his word to be able to use it for player 1, right? So for that, we'll create, I will just comment here and say useful data, all right? Useful data. We'll create a variable and call it words, right? We'll say let words be equal to, and for a start, it will be an empty array because no word has been created just yet, and we'll store all our words within this specific array, right? So it means that array is supposed to have 2 words because we have just 2 players, all right? Each of them having a word per session. So what we want to do is each time a word is being entered here, we want to add it to this words array. Okay, and for that we'll say words dot push of what, oh rather dot push of the value we collect from there, right? Which should be input dot value. All right, and let's console.log. Let console.log words. So we see what happens now with our code. All right, so doing that, if I enter game and I click OK, my game is stored, okay, as the first value there. If I enter guess and I click OK, my guess is stored as the second value. If I enter Loic, all right, so it just keeps on storing, as you can see, right? It pushes, so it adds it to the last position. Okay, but there is something I would like to do here, all right, for the sake of programming. I would like to maintain a certain pattern. I would like to store all of the information of player 1 at position 1 right here. And I would like to store all of the information of player 2 at position 2 right here. Okay, so it will be more useful for me to store player 2's word at this first position. Why? Because it is the word that player 1 has to guess. And more useful for me to store player 1's word at this position. Why? Because it is what player 2's word has to guess. Rather, it is what player 2 has to guess. All right. So for words here, we will just say words. We can call it words to guess. All right. So let me just put it here as words to guess. And player 1, whose information will be at position 0, has to guess player 2's word, and player 2 whose information will be at position 1 here, right, will have to guess player 1's word, right? All these terminologies can be very, very confusing. I'm sure at times I'm just saying words that I myself will only notice after I'm watching the video that I don't know if it was English language I was speaking or how. All right, but I digress. Just bear with me, right? I'm in the flow. I'm in the flow. Just bear with me. All right. So right now, to do that, this does not correspond, right? Because guess has to be at the first position here and game at the second instead. All right. So for that, instead of using push, which adds elements at the end of the array, we will use on shift that adds elements at the beginning of the array. All right. In that way, when player one enters his word game, we have something like that. But when player two will enter his word guess, right? And okay, look at what happens. It stores in the first position. So this will be the word that player one has to guess at position one. And this is the word that player two has to guess at position two. You see the pattern, right? One for one, two for two. And there we go. We can program it very, very easily that way. So far, so good. What's the next thing we want to do here? We want to make sure that when we click on OK here, right, the 1 here becomes 2. And if we click on OK on 2, the 2 becomes 1 again, right? So we want to swap players, all right? So for that, we'll create a function intended for that. So I'll just create another zone here. We'll call it useful functions, all right? And I'll call that function, let's create a function, and we'll call it swap players. All right. It has no input. It's just intended for us to swap players. So for us to do this correctly, we'll need a variable that actually enables us to know who is the current player. All right. So let's just create a variable current player. And obviously, when we launch the game, the initial player is player one. All right. So in this current player, what we want to say is very simple, very, very simple, right? We want to say if the current player, if the current player is 1, all right, if the current player is 1, then it should set the current player to 2. Okay, that's swapping, right? That's changing the player. So let me just explain that a little bit. This function, we'll have to use it right here when we click on the button. Okay, so after we've stored the word, we'll swap the player. So when it comes here, it will run this code here. It means when we have clicked on the button, if it was player 1 here, then it should move to player 2, right? And else means it's player 2, else it should move back to player 1. All right. So the next thing we want to do, because if we do this even now and I type a word, nothing happens. All right, nothing happens. And why is that? Because I have not actually set it to display right here. All right, so I need to be able to change this value here to 1 or 2. For that, we'll go back to our HTML, and I don't want to change player 1. I want to change just this one, right, without necessarily changing the player value here. So to do that, I will put a span. All right, I'll put a span around that 1 to be able to select that number specifically. Okay, let's just say 1. And in this case, span here is our only span throughout our HTML, right? So I can easily select that. Let's just say let current player display. Let current player display be equal to document dot query selector. Okay, dot query selector of who is that? Span, right? So it will go there and select that particular span tag. It is the only span tag, so we can permit ourselves to do this. All right, and then what do we want? The moment we've set the correct player, okay, we want the inner text of the simply display, Okay, we want to change the value inside here. Okay, this is the inner text that controls what is displayed there. So we'll just say dot inner text should be equal to the value that we've given for current player, right? I'm just noticing a typo here, right here. Okay, it is current player. Good. So we have that. All right. So what can we do now is just to check it out, right? So if I click on OK now, it moves to 2. I click on OK, back to 1. All right. This is exactly the behavior that we need to see. So the next thing is that if I type a word here, right, and it goes to 1, normally the value here is supposed to refresh, right? It's supposed to somehow vanish. So to do that, we'll just come right here and say input.value. Okay, remember what is stored there is in the value property. We can also set it from our code. Okay, so we'll just set it to an empty string so that it can restart. And now if I enter a word and I click OK, it goes to player 2 and it refreshes right here. All right, good. So we are on a pretty good footing. The next thing is that when player 1, let's refresh that. When player 1 enters his word game and clicks on OK, and player 2 does same, yes, and clicks on OK, at this level there's supposed to be a sort of change, right? So let's see that in the original stuff. So let me say yes, and then here game, for example, right? So what happens? The game starts, right? You have the instruction here that says guess a letter in the opponent's word, right? That has to change, and then you have this guessing, right? That has to start down here. So player 2's word is supposed to show itself in an underscore manner right here. Okay, not the words themselves, but underscores. So let's start with this. All right, let's start with this. So what we'll do is that we'll create a variable. We'll create a variable right here, and we'll call it status. Okay, and we'll create a language for ourselves. We'll say when the status is 1, the way we've written it here, it implies that the players are still defining their words. All right. So at this level, we will say we want this to happen. We want this to happen if what? If the status is equal to 1. So this should happen only while we are at the level of the players defining their words. Okay. Need to put a semicolon at the end of this. All right. So this will happen only if we have the players finding their word. So that will be our status 1. All right. But then when player 2 has entered his word, we should move to a different status, right? Which is this one, because then the game starts. All right. So what do we do about that? We can just say, how do we know that player 2 has entered his word? That's the dilemma we are in here first. To know that player 2 has entered his word, we will have 2 words right here. Okay, we'll have 2 words. So a way of saying that the length of this particular array will be equal to 2. Okay, so we'll say if words dot length oh, can't write English again, dot length is equal to 2, right? There's something we want to do. What do we want to do if words.length is equals to 2? So now, obviously, we'll still swap, right? We'll still do the swapping, no problem. It has even done the swapping before we enter here. And then at this level now, we need to change the information that is right here in our paragraph tag, all right? So for that, we need to access that HTML. We'll say let's call it instruction, and again, it is the only paragraph tag in our whole in our whole in our whole HTML, right? So let's say query selector P. All right, so it will go ahead and get this stuff, and what we want to do is to set the inner text at this level. to the instruction that we want to give, right? So we'll just say instruction dot inner text has to be equal to, so we said we are doing guess a letter in the opponent's word, right? Let's not reproduce the same grammatical mistake. Let's remove this. All right, and then semicolon right here. So let's try to see this in action. Okay, let's see whether it actually does that. Good. So player 1, game. Player 2, guess. And pap, right? So we have guess a letter in opponent's word. Are you seeing that? Good. So the instruction there is clear. The next thing is the wording that we have right down here. So for that, we'll have to do things a little bit differently. The very first thing I will do is that I'll create a string, okay, that will be responsible for the display down here for each word. All right, so let's just create that array right here. We'll call it a word show, and I'll have something like that. The goal here is for this watch is for the word show here will contain the same words that are here, all right, but underscored. So it means it contains the same number of letters of each word here, okay, but with underscores, and it is actually these words that we will display down here. And then progressively, as the guesses are being done, we will progressively be replacing the words here by underscores and by the real letters rather, so that when we display, that is what shows forth. All right, good. I hope that explanation was clear. I'm not sure I understood it myself. All right, so for that we need to do it at this particular level. All right, so the word that we are getting here is input dot value. All right, so what we will say is let's just go ahead and say it's okay, let's just use input dot value the way it comes. Okay, remember, input dot value is the word we are getting from each player. All right, so I will create a string here, str. What's happening? Str will initialize, let's say let str be equal to that empty string, and then we'll just have to go through each letter of the word that we've taken here, right, and then somehow concatenate the underscore right here. So for that, we'll just use a for loop, and let's initialize our iterator to 0, and the condition for it to go through each letter is for it to be less than the number of letters, which is represented by input dot value, which is the string itself, and then dot length gives us the number of letters in the string, right? And here we'll say I plus plus. So we start at 0 here because indexing starts at 0. All right, good. So that's what we get. And very simply, str will simply concatenate it to say plus equal to and underscore, right? As simple as that. Okay, and at the end of the day, what we should have down here, so let's just console.log to see that. Console.log str, okay, should be a string that contains the same number of underscores as the numbers of letter in the word that the player just entered. So let me just say game here and then click on OK. As you can see, oh, okay, so just for visibility, though it's a little bit visible on my own screen, but for visibility, let's just put space here for now. All right, let's put space here for now and try that again. So if I say game and I click on OK, as you can see, 1 2 3 4, right? If I go guess and I click on OK, as you can see, str that we are logging here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's exactly what we want. All right. So now we need to store this string exactly the way we are storing the word here for correspondence. All right. So we'll just is this same function words dot. Let's just write it. Okay. I like shortcuts, but let's just write this one. So it will be word show dot on shift. All right. On shift of str, right? So it's str that we want to add right there. Good. So now we have the word. That's easy. What we want to do right here, once player 2 has now entered his word, right, is to display that corresponding word for player 1 right down here. Okay, so the logic here will be done automatically. We have no problem, but when it comes to displaying down here, we need to be more technical, because now we'll have to introduce a sort of HTML tag here, which we don't have, all right, yet, to be able to display that value here. So we'll need to go to our HTML, and let's just say that it will appear as an H3 tag, all right. So under the button, we'll just set an empty H3 tag there. That should change nothing. It should change nothing in the appearance of our interface except this little biggie here, and I like it that way. So we have that, and we'll need to select this H3 right here in our JavaScript. Okay, so and we'll call it word display, right? So let's just say let's should I say word display? Okay, it's long. Let word display be equal to document dot query selector of what tag was that? H3, right? H3 tag, and we'll have that. So what we'll do now is that we'll create a function, all right, that whose responsibility will be to actually display the word right here. I think I prefer the name of that function to be word display. Okay, so for this one, how can we call this? How can we call this? It's okay. It's okay. Let's just go ahead. I'm short of inspiration for variable and function nomenclature. All right. So here function word. Let me just say word to guess. Word to guess show. Ah, yeah. That's inspiration, man. Word to guess show, right? Good. Okay, so the goal of this function, what we want to do is we simply want to call this function right here. Okay, and the goal of this function will be for us to see this. We want to see these corresponding underscores from our word show variable. Okay, we want to see it displaying right here with the spaces as you can see. All right, so for that all we need to do is we'll just initialize again an empty string. We'll initialize an empty string right here, and then we'll have to do a for loop on this string in order to add spaces, because here there are no spaces, as you can see here. All right, there are no spaces, and for that we will just say for again var I is equal to 0, I less than, and how many times we want to add it. We need to get now the exact word that we need to show here. So listen, when it's player one's word, when it's player one's word to time to play, not player one's word, when it's player one's time to play, right, it is player two's word that displays right here. If it is player two's time to play, it's player one's word that display right here. All right, so you now better understand why we organize things this way. All right, so what happens when we are on player one? That one tells us everything. The one here is the current player. All right, when we click on OK, it is player one that we move to. All right, so what we want to do is to get the value of the current player now, okay, in order to index the corresponding word inside this word show that we need to display here. As simple as that. All right, so a way of saying that the word, let me just say let word, that we want to display will simply be word show of current player. Unfortunately, current player here is 1 and 2, right? And indexing starts at 0. So we'll need to do -1 because it means player 1's information is found at position 0 and player 2's information is found at position 1. All right. So we just need to do the number of the current player -1, and we have that. So here now it will be var I equals to 0, I less than the word itself dot length, the number of letters within that word. And then here we'll just say I plus plus. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is just to add spacing, right? So it means str concatenation again plus equal to, and what we'll do is we'll use that. Okay, we'll just say w of I, right, so that it places the underscore that is there, and add some not here out of that, and add some spacing right here. Okay, good. So it will take the first word and then put space, then the second word, this first letter in the word, sorry, and then put space, and then take the second letter in the word, put space right up to the last letter, right, and put space. So str here should be our word show with spaces between each letter, right? So now what is left here is just to simply display the word down here, right? And for that, we'll just say word display, what we took down here. We'll set the inner text, right? So we'll just come right here and then say word display dot inner text should be equal to the string that we've just concatenated. All right, so remember we've placed it here at the level of when it's 2, right? So let's see that in action. Again, player 1 word game, player 2 word guess, and A. Good. So when we are on player 1, it is 1 2 3 4 5, right? And let him guess, and we will move to player 2. It is 1. Ooh, this isn't working. When we move to player 2, this isn't working. Why does that? Good. Okay, so that will not work, right? It will not execute again. Why? Because when we move to player 2, but why doesn't it work? Why doesn't it work? It's supposed to. Okay, good. Oh my god, the word dot length is no longer equals to 2, right? It is now equals to 3, right? So that was what we needed to do here. By the time we are swapping, so remember the status has to change. Status has to change because when the word dot length is equal to 2, right? We are no longer defining words, right? It means that the player 2 has entered the word, and now we need to set the status. We need to set the status to 2, right? So that's our language. It's not JavaScript. We are the ones that decided that status 2 implies that they are already playing, all right? And while they are playing now, else here implies that the status will be 2, because here we say if status equals 1, and now in the case the status is equals to 2, we want to do what? We want to make sure that we execute what 2 gets show, right, after we have swapped the players, obviously. Okay, so we have that. Let's see that in action again. Game and guess. All right, good. So this is 5, and when I say okay, it moves to 4, and when I say okay, it comes back to 5, and when I say okay, it moves to 4, right? So that's perfect. So far so good. All right, So what's the next thing? The next thing is actually to program the status2, right? To program the status2. And status2 will have different behaviors depending on whether a particular player has actually found a letter in the opponent's word or not. All right. So what we'll do here is that in this case of status2, they are no longer entering a word to save it like what we have here. They are entering a word, they're entering a letter rather, that we will need to compare with the letters in the existing words to see whether that letter is present. And if it is not, then it moves to the next player, right? If it is present, then it shows the corresponding letter and then allows the player to continue guessing. All right. So for that, let's just take the word. We'll say let word be equal to let w be equal to input dot value. Right. So the input dot value here will be the letter that the player has entered right there. Okay, and then let's also store our word. Okay, we'll say, or rather let me say let L, so that L will be the letter. Okay, let's say let L, come on, let L be equals to input dot value, right? And then let word, the word that we are trying to see if this L is found in, will have to be equal to words, these words right here, words of the current player, right? Of current player. Remember, in words there are two words. Current player minus 1. Okay, so we have that. We need to check if this letter right here, L, is found inside this word. All right, and for that we'll use the index of. All right, so let's just initialize an n and say something like word dot index of all right, and the word dot index of, we want to check L, right? As simple as that. So this tells us go to the word and then check if L, the letter L, is found in this word, and then give us the corresponding index where it is found and store it in this N, right? And if it doesn't find this letter, JavaScript has made it so easy for us. If it doesn't find this letter within this word, it will just return -1 right here. Okay, if it finds the letter, it will give us the index. If it doesn't find the letter, it will give us -1 for the value of n. All right, so what does that mean? It means that we have two different behaviors here. We have the case where it has found the value, and in the case where it has not found the value, right? So it has not found the value, rather, if it has found the value, then n will be different from -1, right? If it has found the value, we'll have a different execution here. Else, right, which means if n is equal to -1, in this else, means it has found the letter doesn't exist there. And it is in that case, when the letter doesn't exist, that we will need to do, we will just need to swap the player. All right, and that's it. All we need to do here is just to swap the player. Okay, I think for both cases, we'll always need to display the corresponding word that emerges from there. So our difficulty here and our final place to program is what exactly enters right here. All right, if he has found the letter in a word, what should happen? And what we'll do is that we'll create a function that will enable us to program or to write what will happen, right? So let's just call it found letter, and the input of that function will say a certain L and the corresponding index. Okay, so we'll say we are taking the letter that he has entered, all right, and we are taking the index where that letter is found for a start to enter this particular function. All right, so now let's go and write what this function is supposed to do. We'll write it right here. Let me copy that. Where is that? Ooh. All right, so let me copy that, and we'll have it here. Function, that's the name. All right, and we'll have that found letter of L comma N. So what do we want to do in the case where it has done that? So the very first thing, as you can see here, let's just show it here. If I found a letter, let me say A, right, and I click on OK, what happens? The underscore that was here is replaced by the corresponding letter, A, right? So I'll need to index this position. Ideally, what I could simply do, right, was just to index the position and then say what is supposed to happen. So again, the word here, let's just get the word. The word that we are interested in is what, this one, right? That's the word we are interested in. And let's just say the word show of that word. Let me just say W show, right? Because we've already used word show up there. Will be simply word show, right? Why am I going fast? Simply word show of current player -1, right? Good. So this is what will contain the underscore version of this particular word. All right. So ideally, what we could simply do here was to say W show, which is the underscore version of N, right? Which is the index where we have found the letter, should be equal to word, right? The letter found, that word should be equals to word of N. Ideally, this should have worked and it should have been just fine. Unfortunately, with strings in JavaScript, this is not possible, right? You cannot replace by indexing a particular string at a position in JavaScript. All right. So what we'll do is that we'll somehow break the barriers around this and use a sort of for loop, okay, that will loop through the word here, okay, and then put the correct values where they belong, but replace the value at N by what we want right here. Okay. So to do that again, this is becoming very common. I will initialize the str to an empty string. These are famous str, and let me just copy this. Okay, it looks very, very similar. We'll loop through the word, but this time around we are looping through this word, right? So it is word dot length, all right, I plus plus, and then within this within the for we'll have an if condition, okay, because we have two cases. We have the case where N is different from I, okay, and else implies is equal to I. Okay, and when N is different from I, we just want to place the normal letter that was there. All right, so it would just be str plus equals, okay, str plus equal the normal letter which was there, which normally is word show, word show of, what is that, of I. Okay, that's what is there. Okay, but then if it is equal, then it's different. str will have to be plus equal to word of I, not word show, right, to replace the underscore that is present at that particular position. Okay, so we can see this in action, not just yet, right? For that, we will need to actually set we need to set our word show of current player, this right here, we need to set it to the new string that we've just created, str. All right, and let's see that in action now. Let's see that in action now. Good. So again, game, okay, and guess, okay, right? So let me try to get you. Perfect, right? So it does that here, and then when it comes up, you see that it just executes the function word to get show. Okay, found letter replaces the u there, and then executes the function word to get show, right? Unfortunately, at this stage, if I press u again, it will still stay here, okay, and do the same thing. We don't want that. If it presses u again when he has already found you, it should move to player 2. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that we need to also replace the value of u that he has found in the original word right here. Okay, so for us to do that, we will use the replace built-in function, which actually creates a new string. Okay, so to do that, let's just do it under this. I'll do it under this, yes, or let's just do it under this. Okay, and what we'll say is word of this. Okay, good. It was just a click. That screen suddenly changed. I did not understand what just happened. Okay, so this is what we want to change. All right, and we'll say it's equal to word dot replace. Okay, replace, and what we want to replace is what is that letter L. Okay, and we want to replace it with an underscore. That's what we want to do. All right, so let me just press Ctrl S on that, and maybe just console.log so that we see what happens. Console.log the final word. All right, console.log words all right, so we have that. So let's go again, game, okay, and then guess. Okay, so now if I say you see what happens, right? The occurrence of u here has been replaced. This replaces the very first occurrence of the letter, so it's really ideal. The occurrence of u here has been replaced, and if I say u again and I go, it goes to player 2. That's exactly what we want, right? A, good, and I goes to the next. So if I say s, and s, so now this behavior, we don't want that, right? We need that the moment he says s, all of the s that are in the word should display, not just the first s. All right, and that is why right here we'll need to use a loop. Okay, we'll need to loop through in order to make sure that it goes through and then takes every occurrence of that specific letter within the word. All right, so for sure, the moment we are entering this function, the letter here and the indices and the index, and the index here are correct. Okay, but then when we are done doing all of this stuff, right here, okay, we need to make sure that we need to check actually and make sure that that letter doesn't exist anymore, and if it does exist again, we need to reproduce this process all over. All right, so for that we'll use a do while loop. All right, so do while loop is a perfect use case here, so it has to do it at least once. Okay, let's just put that in the loop, get all of these and indent that. Okay, it has to do all of this at least once. All right, but it has to do it while, we'll say while n, is different from negative. It's different from -1, because when n is equals to -1, as we saw with the index of up there, right? With the index of, when it's equals to -1, then it means that the letter is no longer found. All right, and we'll just use this very statement here to change the value of n at every single loop. All right, so after it has done all of that, okay, and replace all the value, it has to check whether words of this one, right? We should not confuse things. Okay, whether words of current player -1 dot index of L, okay, whether that letter again is found in n. And if it is not the case, then n will be -1 and it will just come out of this loop, right, and just display the way we saw. But if it is the case, then it comes back here and then redoes the operation for the new position n that was found. Okay, so let's see that in action. Okay, so I'll say here game, okay, and then guess, okay, right, and let's try S. Perfect. So all the S appears, right, and that's that, guys. That's that. So now let's try G. G doesn't go. Are you seeing that? And what's the reason? The reason is that we entered game with capital G, right? And we entered also with capital G. G. Yeah, okay, with capital G, not capital J, sorry. Okay, and we entered also guess with capital J. So to make sure, and what we are entering here is small j. So for example, if I say capital J here, it goes. But actually, the game cannot be like that, right? So what we want to do is to make sure that when we are getting those values, we are getting them in lowercase format, all right? So we'll just convert them to lowercase. Okay, this is for the letter. Let's convert it to lowercase, all right? And for the word also, when we are collecting it, we'll get it in lowercase format. So we don't have all those issues. Okay, so let's go again, and yes. Okay, so S, good, G, good, and U, good, and E, UP. So what is left is your assignment, right? So again, there are a lot of conditions here to take into consideration, all right? Things like, what if we enter something that is empty here, right? There will be a sort of blockage. Okay, so we just for the sake of the exercise focused on the perfect condition. So as you can see, okay, nothing happens here. So there are a lot of things you can do to actually optimize this to the best optimal performance, all right? But this was just a little exercise, all right, so I hope this was useful for you and that it actually taught you some new stuff. You are not expected, especially if you are a new programmer, you are not expected to actually understand it offhand. You have to take your time and go through it diligently, okay, step by step by step, and you will certainly understand it with time. So I hope it helped. If it was useful for you, please leave it in the comments below. And if it wasn't, please leave it in the comments below. If there are things that you think I should adjust in my mannerism of giving the tutorial so that I can always produce a better video for you in future, leave it in the description below. If you like the tutorial, please give me a thumbs up. If you don't like it, give me a thumbs down. And if you love it, just subscribe to the channel because more of such tutorials are upcoming. All right, so you have a wonderful time and don't stop studying. Bye bye.